Now, what is the style of the Quran? We know certain styles. Poetry, for example. Then prose, we have different types of proses. Essays, books, which consist of chapters. Quran doesn't fit in any of these definitions. First of all, we know it. Quran has several times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, it is not poetry. وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ. We have not taught poetry to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and poetry is not worthy of him. It's something below his level. So it's not poetry. But please mind, today we have a special form of poetry, and that is called blank verse. Blank verse has a resemblance to Quran, no doubt. Because in Quran we find, that sounds effect is present there. The qawafi which we call, but in Quran we call them fawasil. The same similarity of voice and sounds appearing. So actually there is a melody and there is a music. So there is a blank verse type of thing in Quran, but not the poetry, the regular poetry, which the Arabs knew, or most of the people knew at the time of the revelation of the Quran. This is something new. This blank verse is something new and has reached east from the west. Number two, this is not a book in the general sense of the word. A book, necessarily consists of chapters. And from one chapter to another, you have to proceed. You discuss something, some issue in one chapter. Now you don't repeat it in the second. Now you go forward. Take the argument ahead. In the third chapter, now you are going further ahead. Don't repeat anything which you have said in the first chapter. This is not the beauty of the book. But we find in Quran the incident of Adam and Iblis repeated in 7 surahs. 6 surahs from the Makki Quran and the 7th one, Suratul Baqarah, from the Madani Quran. Suratul Araf, Suratul Hijr, Suratul Bani Israel, Suratul Kahf, Suratul Taha, Suratul Sad, go on. Actually, this is not a book. That definition of book doesn't apply to it. And we can't call its surahs as chapters. Both these words are not applicable to the Quran. These things should be known, especially to the youth, so that they are not disappointed. If you think it's a book and you start reading it, you will find, well, what kind of book it is? It is repeating the same. This subject was discussed in Surah Al-Baqarah. Again we find it. In Surah Al-Araf, again we find the mention of that event. In Surah Al-Hijr, again in Surah Bani Israel, again in the very next surah, Surah Al-Kahf. So actually this is not the book. And here let me quote from Allama Iqbal. In kitabe neest cheeze digar ast. This is not a book, it's something else. But I'm not going to the second part of this couplet, because it will take me away from the topic which I'm discussing presently. In kitabe neest cheeze digar. Although it's a book, but you don't think it's a book in the general sense of the word in which you use the word book. So what is it then? The style of Quran is that of sermon, khutbah, oration, oratory. We can call Quran a collection of divine orations, an oration delivered at particular moment, then another oration being delivered at another moment. The context has changed. The conditions have changed. Some of the things are still relevant. Some other things have faded away from the relevance. So, but the relevant things have to be repeated again. But those things about which the relevance has gone will not be repeated. But the sermons are repeated. You find things repeated in sermons. So actually, sermon, I think, is not the proper word. But I can't have another word which is equivalent to khutbah. Khutbah is something very profound. Khitabat, oratory, is something else. And sermon is something else. Sermon has a limited sense of giving some advice. We can call it waaz. But khutbah, khatib, khitabat, these words, they have a more profound connotation. So this is a collection of divine oration.